Every summer, I go camping in Yosemite National Park with my cousins, and every trip we spend a night stargazing. There's a village with markets and restaurants down the road from the campsites. Across the road from the village is a large field of tall grass with a winding narrow boardwalk that leads deep into the field. Imagine a boardwalk dock that reaches out into a bay, but instead of open water, it's a field surrounded by towering trees. This spot is where we usually sit to watch the stars. This night of stargazing was uneventful as the sky was cloudy that night and we weren't able to see the stars at all, so we just sat there and talked for a bit. One of my cousins noticed a light deep within the woods that was still and bright. He pointed it out because he thought it was odd how there was a light in that direction to begin with, as that area of the woods has no buildings or campsites, which meant that there shouldn't be people in that area, and it was very late by this time. We moved closer towards that area of the woods along the boardwalk and were able to see that the light was twinkling. It looked as though the light came from a flame. It's strict in the rules of any wooded national park that you shouldn't light flames in areas that don't have a designated fire pit. My cousin was certain that where the light was coming from was empty and open woods, and was well out of distance from any campsites, roads, and housing. The flame must have been very deep into the woods, because no matter how close we got on the boardwalk, the light wasn't becoming any more clear to make out. We stopped when we heard commotion as though a large group of people were there. We assumed that there must have been a party going on until we heard chanting. It started as loud party sounds, but slowly turned into synchronized whooping and then howling. Not like a wolf howl, but more like harmonized groans and wailing. The voices became more guttural and seemed as though the people making the noises were almost in pain or misery. The sounds we heard were no longer ignorable, and it was obvious something odd was happening in those woods. Before I knew it, I was the only one closest to the end of the boardwalk, because when I turned around, I saw that all my cousins had retreated and huddled far behind me, staring with me into the trees. The faint sounds of wailing were enough to know that whatever was going on around that night was not a party. The next night, my cousins and I ventured into the woods in the general direction where we saw the light, and sure enough, it was empty woods in every direction for an acre or two. No signs of camps or cabins. The only evidence of any people being there was a large patch of dirt and pine needles where we found masses of bare footprints in the mud and soil. I think we experienced a cult that night, which is still strange to me that they even exist. I wonder to this day what type of cult they were, and deep down wish we had investigated more that night and gotten closer, even though that would have been scary. When I was 19, I was living with my mom, her boyfriend, and my boyfriend in a desert town that neighbors Joshua Tree National Park. We lived in a small house on a dirt road right on the edge of the national park. Our backyard and beyond was all protected land. All the roads in the area were paved, but for some reason, ours wasn't. There was also no streetlights on our street, which made for great stargazing but very limited viewing capabilities at night. This happened in February, and it gets cold at night in the winter, and we even get a good snow every so often. It all started with noises outside my bedroom window late at night. I even heard a cell phone go off once. My boyfriend even said that he thought he saw somebody running away from my house once when he looked out the window to investigate. This went on and off for a week or so and seemed creepy, but so far harmless. Aside from the phone, which only I heard, it was blamed on the wind or animals in the bushes. Then one night, my boyfriend and I were on the back porch having a smoke. Suddenly, a small rock came hurtling off out of the dark, empty desert across from us. We looked at each other puzzled and startled, and then got up and went towards the door. Just as he opened it, a bigger rock the size of a golf ball came out of nowhere and hit him in the head. It bounced off of him and then hit me. We were both shaken and immediately told my mom and her boyfriend. As we were telling them, more rocks were being thrown, hitting the house, windows, and rolling off the roof. They soon after ceased, and though shaken up, we moved on with the evening. The next night around 10 p.m., the rocks started up again. We were all in a panic, and the guys decided to go out and look for whoever was doing this and teach them a lesson. So they went out into the desert with my big German Shepherd wolf mix to investigate. My mom's boyfriend was really into martial arts, so they had various weapons with them just in case. They had been out in the desert for about 30 minutes so far, and I was inside playing a video game. Suddenly, I heard a crash at the front door, followed by a yelp. I jumped up to see what was going on, and under the door, I saw my dog's foot sticking out on my side of the door, which was closed. My dog had run into the door with so much force that his foot went underneath it. I quickly opened it, and that giant fearless dog had peed himself. Tail tucked between his legs, he hauled it back inside the house and hid. Now, I've seen that dog chase off packs of wild dogs and coyotes. He wasn't afraid of anything. Whatever he saw in the desert that night, I'll never and probably don't ever want to know. I had never seen him like that before or ever again after that night. The guys came back shortly after with nothing to report. Right after they came back inside, the rocks started up again. This time we called the cops, but when they showed up, they said it was probably just some drunk person messing around with us and left it at that. A couple of nights after that, the guys would go hunting outside for whatever it was and never found a trace of anything. The rocks continued on and off for 2 or 3 more nights, whenever somebody wasn't searching outside. Then, one night, the guys decided to get a jug of wine and just sit outside on the front porch with all the weapons and just wait. They started yelling threats out into the dark desert, which got worse and more twisted as the wine began to flow. The threats were dark and disturbing as the night wore on, and had there been someone out there hiding, I imagine they were probably a little scared at this point. My mom called from work and wanted to talk to her boyfriend, so we went inside to take the call. Just as he answered the phone, I heard my boyfriend yell from outside, and I heard him running away into the desert. He came back a few minutes later with cactus prongs protruding from his leg. He said that he chased someone wearing all black through the desert until he drunkenly fell into a cactus bush. After that night, the rocks stopped. I'll never know who or what was hiding out there or why they did what they did. Who would hide out in the desert at night in the middle of the winter throwing rocks for hours on multiple different nights? It was such an elaborate prank if that's what it was for no reason. I still don't feel safe in the desert at night over 10 years later. It was our 10th anniversary, so my husband and I decided to go camping, just the 2 of us, and of course our dog. There's a big national park and camping area near where we live, a little less than an hour's drive away, so that's where we were heading. It's basically a large forest with many small lakes, ponds, trails, and camping sites around. Pretty popular place during the summer, but we still saw some people even though it was late September and the weather was cold. We found a good spot next to a lake and set up our camp. It was a beautiful day, so we wanted to hike a bit in the forest. There was a nice long path that was going around the lake where we had our camp, so we chose to go that way. The lake was quite small, and there was another camping site by it. You could see from there a camp, and from there you could also see our camp, and the camps were almost on opposite sides of the lake. We walked past the other camp and saw a man there alone, just standing and staring at us, not answering when we greeted him. He was maybe in his late 20s, around the same age as us. I thought at that point that maybe he was just shy and a little weird. He had a small tent set up and some other stuff all around the place, so I figured he had been there a while. We just continued walking and didn't think much of it. Eventually, we got to our camp and started to set up our tent before it got too dark. We made some food by the fire and just sat there enjoying the peace. Suddenly, our dog started barking like crazy. She was tied to a long wire around a tree. We immediately realized that she wasn't just paranoid and there was really something in the woods and it was near. It had been very dark for hours at that point. I took the dog and leash and my husband started to look around with his bright headlamp. Our dog just kept barking. We were confused and sure it was some kind of animal, maybe a bear or a moose, but we couldn't understand why it wasn't scared of us and why it wouldn't run away. My husband went ahead to the path that leads to the other camp. Right when he got to the path, which was less than 30 feet away from our camp, he saw something on the ground. I told him to go check it out and followed with our dog. He stopped, turned to me and said, "It's a human laying on the ground." The first thing I thought was maybe they were hurt or dead or something. They just laid there not moving, facing the ground. We asked, "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" And then they suddenly just stood up. It turned out to be the guy from the other camp. He was very scared of our dog and told me not to let her near him. I was kind of relieved that it wasn't some bear or something that was going to eat us, but I soon learned that a bear might have been less scary than this guy. After he stood up, he walked straight to our campfire and sat down. My husband tried to ask multiple times why he was sneaking in the dark forest without any light. He didn't give us any answer. We even laughed a bit and told him how we thought he was a bear or some wild animal, but he didn't even smile. He just stared at the fire, looking annoyed. His right leg was soaking wet. He had probably stepped off the path and dipped it in the lake on his way to our camp. He sat with us for 30 minutes, not talking much. He also clearly wanted to know where our dog was always. I saw he had a knife hanging from his belt, but I guess that's not that weird when you're in the woods. Every few minutes he put his hand in his pocket and just peeked at whatever was in there. It was kind of like checking the time on your phone without taking it from your pocket, but it didn't look like he had a phone in there. I felt very uncomfortable and anxious by the whole situation. So when the 30 minutes had passed, he again stood up and mumbled about going back to his own camp and left. He never gave us any explanation as to why he came to our camp or why he was stalking us in the dark. He had tried very hard not to be seen when we found him. When I thought he was far enough, I told my husband that there was no way I was sleeping in that tent. Fortunately for me, he agreed and said that the guy might come back when we were sleeping. I just wanted to leave as soon as possible, so my husband started packing things up and I was standing with the dog and looking around with the light if he decided to come back. Just when we almost had all our stuff in the car, I saw a quick flash of light on the path from the guy's camp towards ours. He was coming back. Maybe he thought that we went to sleep because he couldn't see our campfire anymore. So yeah, we got into the car and left quick. I don't know if we overreacted, but I had such a bad feeling about him. Who crawls in the dark, wet forest alone just to talk to some strangers? I'm just glad we had our dog with us. This trip made me realize that people are probably the scariest thing to find at night when you're camping. A few years ago, my partner and I decided to take a trip to California to see some of the state parks, ghost towns, and off-the-beaten-path things that don't get a lot of tourist traffic. For the first leg of the trip, everything went great. We camped in our car, found some great picturesque landscapes, creepy ghost towns, scenic views, and forgotten highways. I absolutely loved it. After about a week and a half on the road, we decided it was time to start heading to back home in Oregon. But we decided to take the scenic route for some of it instead of just driving straight home. Our meandering path took us through Death Valley National Park, where there was a short hike to a beautiful waterfall we had seen online and wanted to do before heading back. We found the trail without issue and began the mile hike to the waterfall. Death Valley is desolate, and it's a creepy place that has spooked me bad on more than one occasion, but something about this trail was different, sinister even. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I couldn't hear anybody around us though. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. There were no cars on the trailhead when we got there, so I figured we were alone, but I didn't feel that way. The feeling persisted until we reached the end of the mile hike and saw the waterfall. We sat for a moment, took a few pictures, and started hiking back towards the car. I still felt like something was wrong. I felt eyes on me and had a sort of feeling of dread for seemingly no reason at all. I tried to shake it off, but I just couldn't. I started walking a little faster to our car. We got there without incident. We started throwing our hiking poles and water bottles into the back seat of the car. I noticed there was a black SUV with limo-tinted windows parked next to us in the trailhead parking lot. The car was not running. I didn't see anybody around, and it didn't seem like anybody was in it, but where was the driver? The only place the driver could have been was on the same trail as my partner and I, but I hadn't seen or heard the driver on the trail. It was an out-and-back trail with very steep rocky cliffs on either side of the trail, so the chances of me seeing the driver were high if they were on the trail. The chances of them being off the trail were slim, as the undergrowth was extremely heavy until you got off the cliffside. I'm also certain that I would have heard somebody crashing through the undergrowth near the trail. As I was thinking about this and getting more and more anxious, I saw a huge man emerge silently from the bushes next to the trail to the waterfall. When I say silently, I mean it. He made no noise at all. He was easily at least 6'4", strong-looking, and covered in what my partner believed were criminal tattoos. He had a baseball cap pulled down low over his sunglasses, a long full beard, some kind of rifle slung across his back, and a large hunting knife on his belt. He was holding what appeared to be a cell phone in his hands and waving down my partner. I realized that this huge man had a gun, and the distance between him to us was irrelevant, but I was in panic mode. The man said that he found this cell phone near the waterfall and didn't want us to leave without it. We both quickly checked our pockets and realized that we both had our cell phones, and we both assumed that this was a setup for a robbery or something far more sinister. We jumped into the car, fired her up, and drove up the dirt road as quick as we could. The man just stared at us through the rear window as we drove off. It terrifies me to think that he was out there with us the whole time we were hiking, and we didn't hear him, see him, or even know that he was there. I never would have known the man was out there with us had he not chosen to make his presence known. I'm not going to lie, it really made me think twice about hiking alone in the woods or in isolated and desolate areas. I also find myself wondering what would have happened had we chosen to engage with him. This story is from when my wife, who was then my girlfriend, and I lived in South Africa. There are a lot of game farms and lodges in South Africa, especially around the area of Kruger National Park. This incident took place on a very tranquil 4-star game farm close to the southern tip of Kruger National Park. We had frequented the lodge over the 5 years before this incident, as it was a favorite spot for my girlfriend and me. The lodge had a very nice central area with a pool and restaurant, and the tented chalets were spread out around the property. The chalets were very private and set up in a bush so that you could not see the next one over and could only hear your neighbors if they were very loud. Sadly, the lodge had fallen on hard times and had gone backwards a bit. The weekend this incident took place, only 2 of the 25 units were occupied for the Friday night, and we were the only ones there for the Saturday night. It made me feel a little bit uneasy. To make matters worse, the lodge and farm manager came by on Saturday morning, saying he was leaving the farm for the weekend. He said if we needed anything just to help ourselves in the restaurant fridges and to leave a note and we could settle the bill the next week. It was nice that we would have the pool and jacuzzi all for ourselves. We left to go visit different parts of the national park after the manager left, and we stayed out for most of the day. We got back around 3 p.m., and as we got out of the car, I got goosebumps. It was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit out, so I didn't feel cold. As we approached the chalet, I noticed large shoe prints over my and my girlfriend's prints from the morning. That seriously put me on edge. I approached the chalet and noticed the prints turned around and walked back the way they came. Everything seemed in order at the chalet. We went for a swim and had a game drive around the farm and returned around 5:30. We started to make the fire, barbecue our meat, and prepare some other food. Both my girlfriend and I seemed quite on edge and very quiet. We sat down to eat at around 8 p.m. As we sat down, I looked at my girlfriend and noticed she looked very worried. I asked her what was wrong, and she said that she had a bad feeling and that we needed to leave now. I said I felt the same and we should probably leave after we ate. She refused to sit down and eat though, saying that we needed to leave now, as in immediately, not after we ate. I didn't argue with her, so we chucked our food in the cooler, grabbed our bags, and ran to the car. As we drove out the gate, we dropped the keys in the box and drove away, and the feeling of dread slowly went away. We made the almost 100-mile drive home in the dark and slept in our own bed. We woke up Sunday morning and went about our day as normal. About 4 p.m. that afternoon, my phone rang, and I saw it was the number from the lodge manager. I answered, and he frantically asked if we were okay. I told him that we were safe and sound at home and that we had left the national park last night. He started explaining what happened after we left, and I got ice cold. Apparently, the lodge was broken into and ransacked the Saturday night. They took everything of value, and what they could not take, they destroyed. It was a group of 5 men that did it. Apparently, there was evidence that they ransacked a chalet as well. Only one. The one that my girlfriend and I were booked into. The one that we would have been sleeping in had we not so abruptly left the previous night. So it meant they had been watching us, and the boot prints was somebody keeping tabs on us. The lodge had cameras, but the chalets did not. We left just after 8 p.m. Probably about 8:10 is when we had everything in the car and started driving down the road. It was probably about 8:20 when we left the farm, as it's a few miles drive from the lodge to the gate down a gravel road to exit the national park. The cameras at the lodge caught the first signs of movement at the lodge just before 8:30. At least one of the men was visibly armed with a firearm in the footage, and a few had machetes. We had probably missed the intruders by only 5 to 10 minutes at most. I shudder to think of what would have happened had we been there. There was nobody nearby. We were completely alone on the farm. Only a little bit of cell reception at the lodge, and none at the chalet itself. We would not have been able to call for help. Needless to say, we did not go to the lodges or isolated areas for a long time after that. And sadly, the lodge and farm went under not long after, and it got sold in an auction. That incident has shocked us both a bit, and we vowed to always trust our instincts and intuition, and to tell each other if something felt off. We both had that uneasy feeling since about 3 p.m. that Saturday afternoon when we came back, and the reason none of us said anything to each other was because we didn't want to spoil the weekend for one another. That almost cost us possibly the ultimate price.